Is that going? Is that going?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Good morning, everybody. Crop competition. We see it all the time, don't we, really? If you've been an agronomist for 40 years, you would have seen a couple of instances. If you've been an agronomist for 2 years, you would have seen a few instances. In our wheat paddocks, remember the old days when we used to turn the guile around the corner? You'd miss a bit. And what comes up in that bit you've missed? There's no wheat plants, so we've got milk thistle, we've got amaranthus, more amaranthus, a bit of Johnson grass, more milk thistle, no crop. No wheat growing in that particular corner. And we've seen evidence of that all the time. Every time you go through a paddock, you'll see something that gives you an indication that more crop, gives you less weeds. Sorghum. In the northern region here, our weed control research has really been extended. And of course, here's number one issue, feather top rows and sorghum. Now, we've been pushing our sorghum rows to a metre or at a metre for a long time, haven't we? They've been out there for many, many years with the hybridisation coming along, and they're still out there. And of course, we've got new weeds. We've got weeds that don't want to die with our chemicals, be it residual or over the tops. And here's feather top rows. And this is some of Michael Witterick's and Adam's work at Warwick in Queensland. This is some of the first work we've ever seen done and demonstrated in these trials about changing our row spacings for our grain sorghum with the curse-like feather top rows. Oh dear, one of Drew's mates, ornless barnyard grass population. We know how bad that is. One plant can drop 20-odd thousand seeds or more. And of course, we've all seen this where the sorghum has been choked out, or the maize, or the sunflowers, or any other crops you like to see because of this huge population of barnyard grass, whether it be resistant or not. Trying to get away from that, what can we do about it besides putting the pressure on our herbicides? Got a couple of graphs here. This is sorghum target density in plants per square metre. Now, I know we like to have our sorghum nicely spread, 5 to 7 plants or maybe 3 to 7 plants in a square metre for our dryland country up here. Obviously, we need them nicely spaced. But just look at when we bring them out to 15 plants, this is just talking about crop competition, plants per square metre. Look how much the barnyard grass drops off in biomass. And yes, there's a direct correlation between biomass and seeds produced. So as we bring our sorghum plants per square metre, 5, 10, 15, our barnyard grass popping drops off. And look at our row spacings, 50, 75 and 100, also impacting. So two big things, we're increasing our density of crop plants and reducing our row spacings, reduces the amount of seed going to the ground, reduces the amount of seed produced. That's got to be a big thing. No herbicides. Resistance or not, they're not going to be produced. Oh dear. As I wander around the countryside over the last 40 years, you get a little bit of an idea that sometimes the planter doesn't quite go right. Not the best soil in Australia, admittedly, but look at the barnyard grass here. Look how big it can get. And what's missing in that photograph? What's missing is the sorghum plants that are on this side, on this particular location, and the weeds have got to go on. Uncontrolled barnyard grass, and of course I happen to know that paddock very well, and of course what have we got resistance? Barnyard grass to glyphosate. Another crop. Barnyard grass striking again. Could be the theme here, haven't we? More sorghum or less sorghum than should be, and what have we got growing in that particular thing? This has got herbicide on it. This has got atrazine and dual, the best combination we can get in residuals to control barnyard grass, and look what's happened because we've had no crop competition. So the good old days of just whacking down the herbicide, and you know, if the crop's not there, we'll be right. Well, no longer. You cannot let this stuff get away by having some things like this. And that's all to do with planted technology. The old girals and stuff we used to use, we've come on from there a fair bit, but you still need to have a good number of plants in a square metre and don't have any misses. Something we see every day. A guidepost on a main road. And of course, they've been spraying Roundup around there for years, haven't they? Of course, already for that kerfuffle in California and the bigger kerfuffle in South America, I've had local governments from around Queensland talking to me about what they can do around their guideposts not using Roundup. Because I've been bleating at them for some time about competition. Now, I was down with Pete McKenzie the other week and we had a great chat about competition in these areas where it might not be farmed. That is not farmed. I didn't want to use a chip hoe there. So competition around this guidepost here, because if glyphosate keeps going the way it is, the local governments aren't going to be able to use it, and we're going to have guideposts that are going to be disguised with feather-top rhodes, barnyard, fleabane, sow thistle, because they won't be able to use glyphosate. So competition is going to have to come there too. I haven't got the ideas of it yet. I'm hoping some of those smart people in local government do, or maybe some farmer on the side of the road says, hey mate, why don't you do such and such around the guidepost? Cotton, 2 in, 2 out, some of our pretty cracking clays, and we've got a fleabane here. Now, 100,000 seeds, so that's a survivor. Great job in the rows of cotton, but this bloke here is a bit of a curse. No crop competition. Full rain. There's Diron down the middle of that row there, and that still didn't stop him. Not that I'm suggesting he's resistant to Diron, but he's there. He's a survivor. He's got 100,000 seeds attached to him probably somewhere that's going to get dropped all over the countryside. And how many of those are going to be resistant? And if they're not resistant, we've still got to control them. Crop competition. Cotton, very little in some of these spaces, aren't they? Here's a beauty, feather-top rhodes and a very poor sorghum crop, 2018, just west of Toowoomba. I thought, that doesn't look very good, and so it's feather-top rhodes. So the good news is the roos have come and eaten the whole lot, so that doesn't make too much difference. But once again, a pretty poor sorghum crop, a very poor sorghum crop. Nutrition was the problem here. I know this paddock pretty well. Nutrition was forgotten in this part of the angle. Poor sorghum crop, feather-top rhodes gets over the top. It doesn't mind poor nutrition by the looks of things. And hey presto, we've got a few problems. And this continues all down the paddock. And of course, here's the great bane of it, isn't it? That strategic tillage, or that round and round the clock again, all over 24-hour stuff, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. Who remembers that? Some of us do. And what do we get after we did it? Chickpea stubble. We had uncontrolled weeds because we didn't get the survivors. Well, they all come up in droves. We cultivated, and what do we got a couple of days later? 5 inches of rain in one of our summer storms. That's a pretty big gutter. And that's not just one, they're all over the whole paddock. Out of the blue, right in the middle of summer, post-cultivation. We try to stay away from that. And that's what started us on this herbicide revolution way back in the early 80s, wasn't it? Roundup came into Australia in 77, 78, 76, somewhere like that. And we've been loving it. We've been loving it too much. So we need to diversify. We don't want that, because that's one of the reasons we went on to zero-till, apart from conserving moisture, apart from making a quick job around the paddock, soil erosion. Some more Michael and Adam's work down at Warwick. Great job these gentlemen have done. Mung beans. Mung beans the flavour of the month. It's another part of my job. I know all about mung beans, or do I? But look about row spacing. We pushed mung beans out to 1 metre back in the 90s so we get the little beggars to grow higher, to get the header underneath them. And now Kerry McKenzie comes along and said, hey Mac, we've got to push them back in a bit because they're not giving us any weed control. And he's right. Look at the barnyard grass numbers here and amongst this lot. And there's some in there. Just how thick it can get if it gets in front of our crop. Let's have a look at ordinance barnyard grass dry weight. So it's biomass, all right? So this is row spacing in mung beans, some of Michael's work. And I imagine Kerry McKenzie's got his 2 bobs worth in there. I can just hear him talking about it now. 25 centimetres, 50 centimetres, 75 centimetres. So 10 inch, 20 inch and whatever that is. And look at, this is the barnyard grass biomass, 300 grams, 25 centimetre rows, 50 centimetre rows and 75. And look at the difference, 600, 400 and whatever, 300. Reducing the row spacings gives us more crop competition, less of these things produced. That's got to be a benefit. Instead of battling 30,000 a square, might have been battling 10,000 a square metre. More chance for our herbicides that we need to protect to live on for many, many years. Ordnance barnyards, seed production. Yeah, sure, we've reduced the beggars and made them smaller, but let's have a look at the seed production. This is the seed numbers on the side there per square metre, mind you. 25, 50, 75. A couple of error bars there, but look at the difference in numbers down here for the 10-inch ones, or 25 centimetres, 15 odd thousand. Up here, 37,000. Huge difference, just by dragging those row spacings in. Looks like I've got to change my ways, haven't I? When I'm doing the mung bean course, it won't be out to a metre any longer. I'll be adopting this principle because we need to get on top of these weeds. Feathertop roads, another pain in the bum, still. And it's in mung beans too, unfortunately. Yes, we've got trifluent, and we've got stomp, and we've got dual, and we've got verdict, and we've got all those things registered. We're trying to take the pressure off that herbicide. We want them to still work when I'm long time retired for you younger people. 25, 50 and 75. Once again, feathertop roads. Pretty vigorous sort of a plant, as we know FTR is, but it's still a major reduction in seed production compared to the 75 centimetre row. Hey presto, Peter Bache's favourite enemy, Johnson grass. Not the best photo, but that's what we can get up there. The Chinese certainly don't like this stuff in their grain going overseas, so they're up getting into us anyhow. So once again, Johnson grass has taken over the sorghum paddock. Pretty miserable looking heads there in the sorghum. We need to get this under control, and I just heard that we've got Johnson grass confirmed resistance in Australia. Who said that? Someone said that. Drew, was it you? No. Not you, someone anyhow. You're a great help, mate, I tell you. It's just fantastic being up here. But it's a real pain, and we need to think about it because, you know, there's always been some central Queensland stuff sent to me. Hey, Mac, we think this is resistant to glyphosate. What are we going to do about it? Thank goodness I sent some down to Bargareth Chahan down at Gatton. He said, no, Paul, it's not. So we've got to improve our spraying techniques and our timing and when we do it. So be warned, it's obviously around in Australia, and the Chinese don't want it. South Thistle seeds production in chickpeas. I know it's a pretty crummy season, but I thought these are tremendous work done by the boys down there at Warwick, and I wanted to share it with you. Once again, the chickpea courses, we were pushing them out to a metre, weren't we? Take them out to a metre. Remember those big frondy crops we used to have all those years ago, filling in between the metre? How good was it to have our chickpea crops filling in the whole metre of row and say, oh, we got a better one than yours? Well, maybe we need to rethink. South Thistle production, chickpea plants per square metre. I know 80 is ridiculous, but it was put there for just to give us an idea. But there's 20, that's our standard number per square metre, and that's 40. And that's 25 centimetre and 50 centimetre. And look at the southeast production, how much lower it's come. Just by simple, a regular plant stand and reducing your row width. South Thistle production, crop spacing, this is chickpeas, 25 centimetres, 50 centimetres. Once again, row spacing wins the war, or the battle maybe not the war, but the battle on South Thistle seed production per square metre. Another indication of what you can do if you reduce those row spacings, give these weeds, South Thistle, feathertop and barnyard, those painful three, and I imagine flea bones in amongst there too, a reduction in seed areas per square metre. More chickpea plant density, 20, 40 and 80. And this is the seed production. Look at that, 100,000 per square metre. Can you imagine counting them beggars? 100,000 seeds in a square metre from 20, 40 and 80. Simple, isn't it? Chickpea density, once again, just showing that as you, the tonnes per hectare, which is a great thing, so we know that 20, 40 and 80 are still going to give us 3 tonnes a hectare of our chickpeas, but then you've got the weedy and non-weedy. And 20 plants per square metre, not a bare minimum, we know that's not right, but if we've got 20 plants in a square metre standing us up, looking us in the face, we're pretty happy with that with a chickpea paddock, and this is where the weeds can get away from us a little bit, but it does impact on the yield. So not only do we get our extra yield from having a weed-free zone, we can reduce that number of weed seeds produced. Chickpea density, same sort of trial, just took out all the weed parts and looked at the 25 and 50 centimetres, 80, 40 and 20, and the yield line is a nice flat plane. So 20 plants, 25 centimetres, still 3 tonne to the hectare. This is what south thistle can do to your wheat. This is a very old slide. I'm not even sure where I grabbed it from, but I stole it, so that's good. Grain yield and the weed density of plants in a square metre. So we know that the weeds per square metre will rob our yield. We know that. We've been dealing with that since I was given a chip hoe by Dad when I was 7 years old, which is an awful long time ago. He always said, get out and chip those weeds out there costing us money in the paddock. So I did. And of course, as you drive along the Warrego Highway, you see the headlands have been double planted. You think, look at that. So this is single plant on probably a 20-inch row or an 18-inch row. Look at the weeds in there. Look at the tops of them. And this has been double planted. So we planted one way this way, and then we planted the headland to do it. Old-fashioned, I know, but look at the reduction in weeds. This is double planted. This is single planted. This is wide row. This is whatever, like a chessboard. Oh dear, we've had a couple of misses here. We've got one here, and look at this one down right down the paddock. Wouldn't you be happy to see that? That's milk thistle and black oats, right down through there. Uh-oh, bit of a miss with the sorghum. What comes up? Feather top, fleabane probably. Once again, crop competition. The pictures don't lie. This is a commercial crop. This is not trial stuff. This is just stuff I've taken photos over the years. There's a worse one. Oh boy. Who knew barnyard could grow that high? When I started with ARI, I said, the first thing I thought about harvest weed seed control, I said, that won't work up here. All our weeds, like barnyard grass, are fairly prostrate. And the seeds all drop on the ground before it ever gets there. Well, how wrong was I? 2 odd years ago, how wrong was I? Look at the barnyard grass, it's taller than the sorghum. But we know it can do that, just whether the seeds are still there. And like Mackenzie says, and like Peter Bates was saying this morning, our tram lining, chaff deck tram lining, one of our best things to control our weeds for the future. And here's some of that wide row wheat. That's Eurocloa. Who said Eurocloa can't grow in wheat or barley? There's all sorts of other weeds there, just too wide for the situation. Pretty crummy year too, but jammed all the seeds there, and that's 20-inch wide. Look at the weeds getting a fair gallop, and all that was with 50 points of rain, middle of September. Because we've got a Central Queensland contingent here, a bunch of farmers from up there who had the pleasure with their company, with Hayley and Zoe yesterday, I thought I'd put this one up. We talk about crop competition, and we think the whole world, you know, south of the border, whichever border you think about, with the crop competition, what about these poor buggers up in CQ? Anyone got an idea what that is? I'll take all comers. Speak up, I can't hear you. Parthenium is correct. What's this stuff? Leucaena is correct. What's going on here with the Parthenium in this Leucaena paddock? Well, what the problem was, this is after Cyclone Debbie. So she came through and dropped a whole heap of rain on CQ. And guess what? The cattle had eaten all the buffel grass. They really pruned it and the roos come through. So the only thing that was growing here was the Parthenium and the Leucaena, because the buffel had all been eaten out. A great example of crop competition. If that buffel was there, I've seen buffel take over from galvanised burr in situations. If that buffel was there in some sort of good order and the Leucaena was done like it is, I'll bet London to a brick that Parthenium wouldn't have been there. Thanks everybody.